Hi there. So Tony Mello, Strategic Insurance, carrying along the Flood Chronicles. We have already done two other videos. We've got this video for a flood issuance, and um, and we even have one more for you. Saturday, we're here in quarantine because it's what we do during the coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, or just whatever the heck is going on. And so, got to have a little fun here. Anyway, so we have done a video kind of overviewing the basics of flood, um, some housekeeping terms that you'll see in flood insurance, and some other odds and ends. We've also covered the preferred risk program. We've covered the pre-firm issuing of policies. So now we get to work on a post-firm. Now, I highly recommend you watch the previous video as it's going to dovetail onto this. I'm going to skip a lot of the stuff in the basics of the system here because it's all the same. What changes is having to use the elevation certificate to actually issue this policy, to obtain a rate and issue the policy. So, without further ado, let's carry on here. You've been seeing this client that's been sitting here. Um, I don't normally provide contact or client information in a policy, but it's a name and an email address, and frankly, you're going to have access to it one way or the other. So that's why we have what we have here. This is the beginning of the quote. So I've already done this quote. I'm going to obviously bypass most of this, but you'll start seeing where stuff is filled in. Now, this is a unique one because this client is actually going to deed this property into their trust. So I have the trust information. Now, in flood insurance, trusts don't matter. You can absolutely list the trust here as named insured, and has no bearing on eligibility, pricing, rating, anything like that. So we will actually do this two ways. I'm going to keep Tyler, who is the trustee, listed here on the policy, but we're also going to put his trust as the insured. So that's, well, I guess we'll do this. His trust is the Tyler Lee Zander Trust. Tyler Lee Zander Trust as the first named insured, and we'll go ahead and keep him on there just to avoid a little bit of a headache. We'll go ahead and put his email address. We'll update his phone number. We were working with his wife, but to keep this simple, we'll go ahead and do this. We have the address here. It is going to be their primary residence, so that's checked yes. We've already run the zone determination, so that's why this box looks a little bit differently than in the video you'll watch first. Now, this is the screen you saw before. This actually runs the determination. You're going to get an email. Here we know that the building is, the original firm date is 1980. The building was built in 1997, therefore indicating it is post-firm, and we absolutely need a mailing address, an elevation certificate to rate. All right, I pardon that little bit of an interruption, which won't seem like an interruption to you, but you'll be scratching your head saying, what the heck just happened? I went back, I had to update something on the named insured. I missed one of the names, but that's okay. So here we are. You've seen the screen before. This is the zone determination. We will go next because we know that is correct. So in this case, this person is buying this house cash. So with that said, it's not going to be subject to the loan closing option. So he's going to have his 30-day waiting period. 30-day waiting period puts us at 5/10 from today, 4/11. It is not required under mandatory purchase. We can change that to no. It is a single family residence, so it's other as opposed to these three options. We've got all this information in here. Great. They're actually purchasing the home on 4/30. It's not required for disaster assistance. It is the AE flood zone. This is something that can come up. If it comes up, reach out to the team. It's called grandfathering. There are ways to potentially obtain a better rate. Again, if you think that it's an option, or if you want to inquire about it, feel free to talk to the team here, and we can kind of guide you through that. But for most cases, you're going to have current flood map as your option. Now, again, you've seen the screen before in the prior video. This is all the same information. It's going to ask the same questions. Here you see we've added the square footage because we need to have the excess flood as well on this. Now, we'll talk about that in a separate video about excess flood. We touched on it previously in the flood basics video, but we do need it here. Now, you're going to see it's going to ask, do we have an elevation certificate? If we say no to this, it's going to then error out and say you need an elevation certificate. We do have a certificate. And in fact, it is right here. Voila. So what you're going to see is that I'm moving that off to the side for now. It's going to ask you for the elevation certificate date. We pull that over here. We look down here to the surveyor information. The elevation certificate in a higher level overview has about 4 sections, and they're lettered and then followed by numbered. Very easy to navigate. Section A, Section B, Section C, Section D. When you have a building that is rated with an elevation certificate, you have to have pictures of the building. You're going to need pictures of the front of the building, the rear of the building, which you actually see that we do not have. We will get them. Clearly, it was just an error in the actual survey. We can obtain them after the fact. Then you'll see the left side of the building and the right side of the building, typically. You need these pictures in color, and they have to be dated within 90 days to be accepted and to actually receive the policy from National Flood Insurance. If you don't have them, you have to get the pictures. They have to be taken within 90 days of the application submission. Now, you'll see the certificate was completed on 3/12/20, and we have the pictures. So, assuming that we get this other picture, and we'll call the surveyor for that, we're well within 90 days. We're good. So, you get over here, it's going to ask you the survey date, the diagram number, the base flood. It's going to ask you for all these figures here. It's also going to ask you about photos. And you see it says Section D or F of elevation certificate, A, A7, B, B9, or B6. Depending on the form that's used, it could be any one of those. So that's why I give you some different ones. This, for the most part, is data entry here. So, you're going to come down here and you see base flood is 10. It's already filled that in. Top of bottom floor, 10.87. Now, what you actually need to do is you can only use the 10th decimal place. So think back to your early days of schooling. The 10th is the first decimal place. Do not round. So even though this says 10.87, we cannot round that ourselves to 10.9. You have to just put in 10.8. It's silly. If you find something that's not making sense, like, well, that's kind of close, call the team, ask us. It can get a little complex, again, in terms of how it actually operates. If it's over 10.5, or if the decimal point is over 0.5, it's going to round up in some cases. But again, just literally chop off the 100th decimal place, just use the 10th, which is the first decimal place, and just roll with that. If you have any questions, reach out to us. So we've already done that in here. We've put all this information in. We've put our photo information. Now you're going to see where we have garage information and the foundation information. In the basic flood video, I made mention that it doesn't matter. It doesn't on those policies. On a post-firm policy, it does. So you'll see here we have we do not have a crawl space, which is good, but we do have a garage. You have the square footage of the garage, and then it's going to ask you how many flood openings are in the garage, the net area of the openings, and if they're engineered or not. Let me keep this simple. If you have a garage that is lower than the base flood, so in our case we do, attached garage 7.72, we have a base flood of 10, we need to exclude the garage. That's done internally, but you have to have the correct amount of venting here. Oversimplified. Well, this part is not. For every 1 square foot of space, you have to have 1 square inch of venting. So you see we have 400 square feet of garage, 256 square inches of venting. This is not properly vented. We disregard it for the purpose of this video. We're already addressing that. That has to be corrected. We can leave it be for now. But for the purpose of the video, you definitely want to keep an eye on that because that can make a difference in the flood rate in terms of how the rate returns. So we put that information in. We've answered the questions. Great. There's no basement, enclosure, or crawl space below, which is good. The building is not elevated. And what they mean by elevated is, excuse me, you'll see where it says it's elevated by means of piles, posts, piers, columns. The best way to think about that is what you would call a Key West style home, where it's, you can park underneath the house and the house is up top. If that's the case, then that would be elevated. But in this case, it is not. It's a 2-floor house, 2-story house with on a slab. So in this case, it's actually a slab on fill. So we've selected that. We've put the replacement cost in, which is $750. We're going to get our full $250 on the building, $100 on the contents through this policy. Contents location, lowest floor above. It's defaulted. It's fine. And we hit next. Now you'll see here, this looks a little bit different than the prior, the preferred risk policy, where that says, here's your building amount, here's your building limit, and then they give you a column for deductible. A little different here. You've already put in the building and contents limit in a prior screen. What you're seeing here are the deductible options. So you can have identical deductibles for both the building and contents. You can take a higher deductible on the building and a lower on contents, up to you. So you'd see like this here corresponds to a $3,000 building deductible with a $1,250 contents deductible. Important thing to keep in mind with flood insurance is there's a deductible for the building and there's a deductible for contents. So in this policy, follow me, it's $250 on the building, $100 on contents. If they had a total loss, they're going to pay a total of $2,500, $1,250 for the building, $1,250 for contents. Just the same, if you go to the $5,000, you're going to be paying a total out of pocket of $10,000. $5,000 for the building, $5,000 for the contents. That's why we do not ever recommend the $10,000 deductible for the building and contents, because now you've self-insured for the first 10 of the building, first 10 of the contents, or a total of $20,000. So if you look at that, the savings of taking on an extra $10,000, in this case, you're looking at about $100 a year. Doesn't really make much sense. This client has opted to take the lowest possible deductible, which is $1,250, $1,250, for a premium of $782. So we hit next. Again, we get our same screen where it shows the additional options. Now, again, you see here, we've got our national program here. Zurich is actually ineligible. As I mentioned, the Hiscox market is a little strange. I'm pretty sure the client does not want to pay $10,500 for flood insurance, but hey, if they did, awesome. And the Chubb product is out. Now you'll also see here, we've already started the excess quote. We know that. We'll go back to that in the following video, but that would also show up as well. So we can hit close. If we needed to add a lender, we would do so here. We don't have to add a lender, so that's okay. We can just hit cancel and take us back to this screen. So we hit next. Now we're about where the rubber meets the road. So we can obtain our new quote here if we need it, and we can also get the application here as well, but we'll get that after once it's actually issued. So again, select the agent. Doug. Doug is always the agent. If they ask for an agent, it's Doug. In this case, the renewal bill will be paid by the insured. We're going to actually make a credit card payment. I am going to go ahead and back out of this and pause the video while I enter the card information, just because it's the right thing to do. So bear with us a second. We will hit next, and when we come back, we'll be on the final page. And we're back. So you'll actually see here what is required to upload once you've bound the policy. Again, you'll have this already. Elevation certificate, photos. These items here that say automobile registration, proof of insurance for a vehicle, voter registration, blah, blah, blah. This is all simplified and completed and fulfilled by the statement of primary residence form, which is signed by the insured. It's part of the application. So if you issue the application as the primary residence, it's going to attach the form automatically when you go in here and you hit flood application. You'll get this, and you'll see at the very end, it shows primary residence form. Wonderful, great, everybody's happy. So that's what we need. And so we will go ahead, save the application to our file. And there we have that. And then you can also hit the payment transmittal. I'm moving that off to the side so nothing's there. But it's going to pop up a PDF that shows, hey, here's the receipt. You'll save that as well. Put that in the file. And then you have issued your flood policy based upon post-firm rating. So, quick little video. Again, want to give you a little bit of a tutorial on how to issue the policy, as well as some basic information about the flood insurance. The figures, and this is probably the best thing to highlight, in that data entry section where we had it, and you have the elevation certificate, these can look a little different. They're all essentially the same form, but maybe they're an older form, maybe they're a newer form. Just make sure you're looking at the numbers that they tell you to, and just input the data as you see it. Part of flood is not so much just entering the data, but actually knowing what the data means. And that's something that as you do more of this, you will learn and be able to better interpret something. So when you look at it, you might say to the client, oh, well, Mr. and Mrs. Client, that's why you've been getting a $2,000 flood rate from everybody else when we can have, maybe a $700 or $800 rate. So that's really the biggest thing. It's just a lot of, you're going to do the data entry, put it into the system. If you have any questions or if you kind of get back some off the wall number, then something probably, it could have just been a simple keystroke error. I've had my share of that. It could also be something a little more complicated, at which point, you've got a lot of resources here with the team. Feel free to reach out so we can help you and obviously get you moving forward and get your client on their way. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we are here to help. Thanks.